Throughout the last 5 centuries, a destructive force has consumed 3 of the world's most powerful empires. Today, America is tracing that same deadly trajectory, moving through each phase with eerie precision. The warning signs aren't subtle anymore. We're already past the point where the others could have turned back. Consider Spain in 1590. Their wealth was incomprehensible. Half the planet's precious metals belonged to them. Their armies were unmatched. Their coins circulated across continents. 8 decades later, everything had vanished. They'd gone from global domination to economic ruin, never to rise again. Britain's turn came in 1914. They commanded the largest territorial empire humanity had ever seen. British flags flew across the globe without interruption. Their currency anchored international commerce. 4 decades later, the empire had dissolved, the pound had crashed, and they'd become a satellite of American power. The Soviet Union stood as a nuclear superpower in 1991. Their influence reached every corner of the earth. Their military capabilities rivaled America's. Then, in less than 3 years, the entire structure collapsed inward. No bombs fell, no armies invaded. The economy simply imploded. 3 catastrophic failures, 3 dominant powers, 3 identical patterns of self-destruction. And America has already passed through 5 of the 7 critical stages. We're not approaching danger, we're surrounded by it. This is about understanding how superpowers die, why they always believe they're immune, and why every indicator suggests our turn has arrived. The timeline is compressing faster than most people realize. Imperial collapse operates differently than most imagine. It doesn't announce itself with military defeats or foreign invasions. The destruction begins internally with economic exhaustion. The empire stretches beyond sustainability. Military installations cover 150 nations. Wars multiply across theaters. Commitments pile up without the resources to honor them. Debt accumulates beyond any reasonable path to repayment. Initially, the deterioration remains hidden. Commerce continues. Battles are won. Government officials keep making promises. But the foundation underneath is fracturing. Resources get misallocated systematically. Production capacity shrinks year after year. Talented people start emigrating. Then the acceleration phase begins. Allied nations start preparing backup plans. Adversaries probe for weaknesses. Trading partners develop alternative arrangements. The reserve currency loses its grip gradually, then suddenly. The advantages that built your power transform into fatal vulnerabilities. Your currency, once hoarded by every nation, floods back into domestic markets. Your military, deployed across the planet, becomes financially impossible to maintain. Your guarantees, once backed by overwhelming strength, turn into hollow rhetoric. This isn't academic theory. Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union experienced exactly this sequence. They fell because they made the identical decisions we're making right now. They assumed their dominance was permanent. They expanded militarily beyond reason. They corrupted their monetary systems. They refused to acknowledge reality until collapse was already underway. Spain's story provides the original template. After Columbus reached the Americas in 1492, Spain emerged as humanity's first global empire. They crushed the Aztec and Inca civilizations, seizing control of mineral wealth beyond imagination. By 1550, Spanish ships were transporting 200 tons of silver annually from the New World. By 1600, that figure had doubled. Spain controlled Europe's money supply. The Spanish real became the world's dominant currency. Everyone demanded Spanish silver. This is where the pattern starts. A nation controls global money and it becomes convinced of its invincibility. King Philip II ruled from 1556 to 1598 with resources no monarch had ever possessed. He deployed that wealth toward imperial expansion. Military overextension came first. Spain waged simultaneous wars everywhere. Against the Ottoman Empire across the Mediterranean. Against France throughout Italy. Against Protestant insurgents in the Netherlands. Against England's naval forces. Wars in the Philippines. Wars throughout the Americas. By 1580, Spanish military commitments spanned 4 continents. The expenditure was astronomical. Half of all government revenue funded the military, and still the demands exceeded supply. Currency debasement followed naturally. The Spanish crown couldn't cover expenses through taxation alone. They did what every failing empire does. They corrupted their money. They began mixing copper into silver coins. Coins that should have contained pure silver became half copper, then 3/4 copper. The face value remained constant while actual value plummeted. By 1600, Spanish silver coins barely contained any silver at all. Merchants refused them at face value. Inflation exploded across the economy. The debt spiral accelerated from there. Spain borrowed constantly. Italian bankers, German bankers, anyone willing to lend. By 1557, barely 20 years into Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted, restructured, and immediately resumed borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, then 1575, then 1596. 4 complete defaults across 40 years. Each time they promised reform. Each time they returned immediately to borrowing and spending. Loss of productive capacity represents the most misunderstood aspect of Spain's collapse. They possessed all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. When you have unlimited money, production stops. Why grow food when imports are available? Why construct ships when you can purchase them? Why innovate when you can simply spend? Spanish nobility viewed work as beneath them. Manufacturing declined. Agricultural output stagnated. All wealth flowed toward importing goods from other nations. The gold and silver arriving from the Americas departed immediately to purchase French wine, Italian silk, Dutch products. Spain became merely a pipeline. Wealth flowed through, but nothing remained. By 1600, Spain was producing almost nothing. They depended entirely on imports, entirely on silver to finance everything. When the mines began depleting, when production dropped, the entire system collapsed. Social decay accelerated in parallel. With the economy failing, crime exploded. Madrid's streets filled with beggars. Productive citizens emigrated. The best minds fled to France, England, the Netherlands. Nations that were building, creating, growing. Spain retained only bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. No one creating wealth, everyone consuming it. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1650, they'd lost the Netherlands, their wealthiest territory. By 1700, the Spanish Empire existed only on paper, economically dead. They fell from global superpower to secondary power within a century. They never recovered. Modern Spain is a pleasant regional European nation, culturally rich but globally irrelevant. The descendants of conquistadors attract tourists. That's what imperial collapse produces. Fast forward 3 centuries to Britain. At its peak, Britain controlled a quarter of the planet's land surface. 400 million subjects. The pound sterling anchored global finance. Every major trade contract used pounds. Every central bank held British bonds. London was the world's financial center. Like Spain 3 centuries earlier, they believed it was permanent, but the pattern was already in motion. Military overextension began by 1900. Britain had military commitments everywhere. India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They defended territory across 6 continents. The expense was enormous. When World War I erupted in 1914, Britain faced a critical choice. Remain neutral while Europe destroyed itself, or enter the conflict and bankrupt the empire to secure victory. They chose war. World War I cost Britain over $40 billion. That's $1 trillion in current money. They borrowed from everyone, primarily from the United States. By 1918, Britain owed America billions. The creditor had become the debtor. But they'd won. They kept the empire. They believed they could rebuild. They were wrong. Currency debasement followed. The pound was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war had drained reserves. They'd shipped gold to America for weapons, food, supplies. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves had been cut in half from 1914 levels, but they attempted to maintain the pound's value anyway, returning to the gold standard at the pre-war rate in 1925. The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive. Manufacturing declined. Unemployment rose. The government maintained high interest rates to defend the currency, destroying the domestic economy. By 1931, they couldn't sustain it. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't honor its commitments. The debt spiral continued. Britain never recovered from World War I debt. Then World War II started. Another $120 billion in costs. More borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed the United States and Canada more than $30 billion. More than Britain's entire GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. They couldn't defend it anymore, couldn't afford it, couldn't maintain it. Loss of empire came next. In 1947, Britain surrendered India. The crown jewel, the wealth source for 2 centuries, gone. Over the following 2 decades, they lost everything. Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books. Currency collapse accelerated. In 1940, £1 equaled $4.03. By 1950, $2.80. By 1970, $2.40. By 1980, $2.30. Today, $1.27. The global reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain maintained pretense. Permanent UN Security Council seat. Nuclear weapons. Special relationship with America. But everyone knew the truth. They were a former power, a museum of past greatness. The empire was gone and never returned. Now examine the most recent example. The Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower. Nuclear weapons, massive military, control over Eastern Europe, satellites in space. They believed they represented the future. Communism would bury capitalism. The Soviet model would dominate. For 45 years, they competed with America, matched us militarily, built more tanks, more missiles, more troops. But beneath the surface, the economy was dying. Military overextension again. The Soviet Union spent 15 to 20% of GDP on the military, triple America's spending. They had to match American technology, reach, alliances. But their economy was a fraction of the size. Afghanistan, Cuba, Syria, Vietnam, North Korea, Angola, Ethiopia. Everywhere America had influence, they had to counter. The cost was unsustainable. Economic stagnation followed. The Soviet economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept them afloat, but nothing else functioned. Factories produced garbage. Farms failed. Technology fell decades behind. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was importing grain. A country with some of Earth's best farmland couldn't feed itself. Central planning doesn't work. Innovation dies under control. No one produces without incentive. Currency collapse was inevitable. The ruble was never a real currency. It couldn't be exchanged internationally. Even Soviet citizens didn't trust it. They used dollars when possible. The government had to purchase foreign goods with gold and oil because nobody wanted rubles. By 1985, oil prices dropped. Soviet gold reserves were depleting. They were running out of real money. Loss of empire came suddenly. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe departed. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany. Gone within a year. The satellites that gave the Soviet Union strategic depth vanished. The Soviet government couldn't stop it. They were broke. Complete collapse arrived on December 26, 1991. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. 900 days from Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. No war, no invasion, just economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid. The government couldn't function. The ruble became worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from internal economic failure. The pattern played out again. Overextension, currency failure, debt, loss of empire, collapse. And the United States is following the exact same pattern, stage by stage. Military overextension. The United States maintains over 750 military bases in 80 countries. We have troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO, defending Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, fighting in the Middle East, countering China, countering Russia. Our military budget is $850 billion annually, more than the next 10 countries combined. And it's not enough. We're stretched thin. Equipment ages, recruitment is down, we have commitments we can't fulfill. If China invades Taiwan, if Russia pushes into NATO territory, if Iran closes the Persian Gulf, we can't respond to all of it simultaneously. We're overextended, just like Spain, Britain, and the USSR. Currency debasement. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar became pure fiat currency. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We're not mixing copper into silver coins. We're just printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different. The result is the same. Debasement, debt spiral. The United States owes $36 trillion. That's 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on defense. We run deficits every year, $1.8 trillion in 2024 in a growing economy. During peacetime, we borrow to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain borrowed until it collapsed. The USSR ran out of money. We're on the same path. Loss of productive capacity. America doesn't make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted, shipped to China, Mexico, Vietnam. We import $800 billion more than we export annually. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for everything. Medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while dollars flow out. When the money stops flowing, we're in trouble. Social decay. Trust in institutions is at all-time lows. Crime is rising. Homelessness is exploding. Drug overdoses kill 100,000 Americans annually. The best and brightest are leaving or checking out. Fertility rates are collapsing. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix anything, can't build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends it's fine. It's not fine. We're on stage 5 of 7. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before complete collapse. So did Britain. Spain lasted longer, but the pattern is the same. We're not at the end yet, but we're deep into the sequence. Stage 6 is loss of reserve currency status. That's when allies start diversifying, when trade moves to other currencies, when the dollar comes flooding back home because no one needs to hold it anymore. We're seeing early signs. BRICS nations developing alternatives, central banks buying gold, China and Russia trading in yuan and rubles, Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil. The cracks are forming. Stage 7 is collapse, not gradual decline, sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost the empire in 20 years, Spain took longer, but the result was the same. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes impossible, when the military can't be funded, it doesn't decline gracefully. It collapses quickly, brutally. Everyone who thought it couldn't happen here learns the same lesson every empire learns. It can, and it does. 3 empires followed this pattern. Spain, Britain, the USSR, each believed they were exceptional. Each believed they were different. Each believed the rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong every single time. We're telling ourselves the same lies right now. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. We're America. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain empire without productive capacity. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. You cannot avoid stage 6 and 7 once you've completed 1 through 5. The sequence is locked in. The only question is timing. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says collapse is coming. When it comes, it won't be slow, it'll be sudden. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The reserve currency becomes a regional currency. The empire becomes a memory. 3 times it happened before. The pattern says we're next. Since 2020, we've accelerated every stage. Printed more money, increased more debt, extended military commitments, hollowed out production, fractured society. We're not walking the path anymore, we're sprinting down it. The end is visible if you know the pattern. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe America can do what Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union couldn't. Maybe we'll reform, rebuild, restore. Maybe this time really is different. But the pattern says otherwise. The math says otherwise. History, which has watched empires die the same way repeatedly, says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. The answers aren't hiding in the future. They're written in the past.